H3 Conversations is brought to you by Major League Mindset, results on and off the field, and by Jeff Burton Consulting, charting your path to a successful outcome, and by Croze Sports, family, community, and sports.
Hey, welcome everybody to session 3 of H3 Conversations, our final scheduled H3 conversation of the fall, and what a blast this has been. I've actually been really looking forward to this session. We planned this one before the first H3 conversation, and I had to wait all the way until the 6th session to get these guys on this call. So we are so excited to welcome 4 guests tonight. But before I introduce them to talk about the issue of mindfulness, I want to quickly introduce my co-host. Those of you who've listened before will remember Greg Angilly. Greg, introduce yourself, please.
Hey guys, happy Thanksgiving, and this is a blast. This is going to be way less of you and I talking on this one. I am actually interested in so many different capacities. I'm the head of the school right now, and I'm really focused on mindfulness. And so this is going to be an exciting evening listening to these guys. I know Jeff through baseball recruiting for my son, who's at Rhodes College, and I actually told Coach Cleanthes at Rhodes I was part of something like this tonight, and that I would possibly be following up with Peavey project as an idea maybe for Rhodes baseball to take on. So that's the passion I have for this already. And so I'm going to let all of you guys introduce yourselves, because I couldn't start with Mr. Cuddyer, because I think I probably heckled him in the San Francisco Giants. I'm feeling guilty as a 50-year-old to finally put a face with the name and say, I'm in. Sorry. So why don't each of you guys start and introduce yourselves, and we'll jump into what we're doing, but let's hear who we're talking to, and then I'll let Jeff kind of kick off this Peavey project and the whole mindfulness thing. So I'll let you guys I'll pick. I'm a lacrosse guy. I mean, I know we're mostly baseball dudes, but go ahead, Jake. Fastest game on foot, buddy.
Happy to. Yeah. So I'm Jake McDonald. I am one of the co-founders of the Peavey project. I'm here in Richmond, Virginia, and thrilled to be here. Yeah. Looking forward to the conversation.
Collin.
Yeah. Hey guys, Collin McConaghy. I'm the other co-founder of the Peavey project here in Richmond, Virginia. And we'll get into a little bit of our background as we get talking here. But yeah, I'll kick it over to Michael.
Michael Cuddyer, excited to be here. Played 15 years in the major leagues. This past year, I was the manager for the 18U national team, and this is a subject that's pretty near and dear to my heart. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Evan.
Hey guys, Evan Justice here from Richmond, Virginia. Played college baseball at NC State, and now I'm with the Colorado Rockies organization and made my major league debut in August this year.
Congratulations on that. And before we get done with this, I want to know what it's like being a pitcher in the Mile High City, but we'll get to that in time. That may come all the way around to mindfulness at some point in time, right? So, all right. Well, I'm really excited about this. This is a subject that, in my opinion, in the culture today, can't be talked about enough. I'm on the board of directors for the UVA hospital. We have a foundation dealing with mindfulness because it's an epidemic in the healthcare field right now. After COVID, one of the things that we realized was that we needed to take care of the people that are taking care of us. The game of baseball is where I spend most of my time these days. And one of the things that I realized as a coach and a player myself is that we need to do a better job of not just training kids how to swing and to throw, but also to think and to believe, because frankly, we know that this game is played between the ears. And again, we may get into games like football and lacrosse and others. Most of our audience will be a baseball audience, but not entirely, right? So if we go into other sports, so be it. What I'd like to start with, because this initially started when one of my clients, actually, who's on the board of the Peavey project, thought that this might be a good connection for us. And boy, was it. So I'd just like maybe, Collin, you to start just talking a little bit about the Peavey project, how it got started, what about the name Peavey? Where did that come from? And what's the purpose? And you and Jake can split this up in any way that you'd like to do it. My guess is you've done this together before.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Jake start it. He normally gives us our intro, and I'll follow up at the end here. But yeah, Jake, get us rolling here.
Cool. Yeah. So it's named after Alex Peavey, and he's been a mindfulness teacher in the Richmond area for a couple decades. Most notably, he had a great impact with the VCU basketball Rams, so at a Division I basketball level. And he was instrumental. So he was actually one of my lacrosse coaches when I was in high school. And I guess my personal background that led me into Alex and then into mindfulness was in playing lacrosse at Hampton Sydney. I had a cool experience and it was really fulfilling. But I was kind of dumbfounded where it just seemed like the zone was such an elusive thing for me. There were days where the game was slow and I was fast. And then there were days where it was the complete opposite. And it felt like almost like a cruel game. So in grad school, that's all I studied. I was like, okay, like what is the zone? How do I grow it? How do I train it? And mindfulness was a word I kept seeing again and again. And then in 2015, my wife and I moved back to Richmond and had a chance to work at the collegiate school where I first met Alex. And then I reconnected with Alex Peavey and then Collin. And it was special. It was one of those things I describe it as like if you didn't know what basketball was and you walked into a gym, it wouldn't take you very long to be like, that's Michael Jordan and he's really good, right? And so like that was Alex Peavey for us, like his ability to take this concept that can be very ambiguous and just be so direct and clear on this applicable practical skill was magnificent and was so impactful for me and gave me the tools and the skill set to bring words to my experience, like my internal experience. Like I wouldn't have told you like anxiety was a word I would have said like I played with. And in working with him, I was like, well, damn, like, yeah, like that was definitely a factor. So I got so much more aware, and it was the performance piece that drew me in. And once I was able to work with a practice, it was really the mental health component that was a game changer for me. And so being in education for 10 years, we're like, we gotta make this thing accessible. We gotta open this up. And then in 2017, Alex was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer and was given 4 days to live. So it was basically like on Thursday, he was told he wouldn't make it through the weekend. And we had seen for years his ability to connect with student athletes, like, oh, you're nervous for a wrestling match, like let's go to diaphragmatic breathing and slow things down and kind of rely on our training. And so we'd seen mindfulness and competition and performance. We hadn't seen this degree where his ability to lock in and being like, I'm being given a diagnosis of 3 days and I'm making the choice to live. To see something like that, like right in front of our eyes, was so powerful, and only just further pushed us down this path of mindfulness, teaching it, understanding it. And we kind of earned our chops in a pretty competitive environment. As you all know, like 15-year-olds can be brutal. So it was like the ninth and 10th grade health and wellness. Collin and I just like, we jumped in and we like tried to take as many reps as we could, like what works, what doesn't. And we just failed forward like a ton. And try to find the rhythm, like how often, do we do this and what examples work, what doesn't work. And Alex just stayed, like to continue the story, like Alex survived and he lived past his diagnosis. And a year ago, or in 2020, he was actually diagnosed with another stage 4 cancer and he was told he had 8 months to live and he lived past that. So he credits really the entire thing to his mindfulness practice. He started practicing when he was 15. He's like, I knew this practice was for me. I just didn't know why until this diagnosis. So any good that we do is really just a byproduct of the impact he's had on us. So that's a long story, and I'll let Collin kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, no, Jake hit it on the head. And for me, my backstory, I always start with I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and we all kind of know what goes with that and the world that we kind of grew up in. And I was very fortunate to go off to play college football at the University of Richmond. But in growing up, it was baseball into football into basketball, baseball into football into basketball with all 3 boys. And I go away to Richmond. And I just, like Jake, I loved performance. One of the reasons I was at Richmond, I fell in love with the weight room in high school. I had an awesome high school head coach in Scott Abel, who's now the head coach at Davidson with their football program, went from Amherst to Washington and Lee to Davidson. and just kind of put me on this track where it was, performance kind of became everything for me. And, sleep, exercise, nutrition were all things that I had dialed into in college, but the mental piece was never presented to me. And I was at Richmond when we won a national championship and 3 conference championships when I was there. My class was the most winning class in Richmond history. But again, this is 2009 when I graduate. We weren't talking about mindfulness. We weren't talking about mental health. And when I graduated, unfortunately, when I was a sophomore, I'll tell a personal story that gets me to why I'm here and, doing what I do. I lost my oldest brother, who, suffered from mental health conditions, which they probably didn't diagnose at the time. And then it turned into some addiction things. And then, unfortunately, he committed suicide. And for me, I went right back to football. It was all I knew. It was, hey, bury your brother. And then 2 days later, you're right back taking exams. And 2-3 years later, it catches up with me. I'd never dealt with capital T trauma before. And I start getting anxious and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I've been able to do any and everything my entire life. Like, what's happening to me? Like, am I dying? What are these feelings? And again, I'd never been able to name them my entire life. And as I graduate and I get to collegiate, I'm a certified strength coach at that point. I'm coaching football and everyone's like, you got to meet Alex. Like, I know you love the performance side. I know you love the weight room. You have to see what he's doing. And I say this and I don't say it lightly. I'm being serious. I look at Alex as kind of like a lifesaver for me. I mean, in a time, one of my, say darkest times where I'm dealing with these things and not knowing what's going on. I'm young, I'm married, I'm working for the first time. Football is no longer something that I'm doing on a daily basis, but now I'm coaching and I'm in it in a different light. What I learned from mindfulness was how to be human and be okay with being human and not feeling like I had to be this, unshakable, unflappable football player, right? Who didn't have feelings, who couldn't, be sad, who couldn't be fearful, who couldn't be scared. It was like, that's all part of the human experience. And it was never something that was told to me. I'm like, it seems like common sense to me now because I've been doing this for 10 years. But for me, I think the beauty of the work that we're now doing is we go back and it's like, man, if I would have had this when I was in high school, like how much stress I would have saved myself, how much of a different player I would have been. Now, if I can go back and give to other people like Alex has given to me and this world he's exposed me to, like, I think that's what kind of lights the fire for me personally. It's like, I love performance, but I love seeing people be the healthiest version of themselves because that leads to performance. There is no performance without health first and foremost. And that's kind of how we go about this and what it led to. Jake and I had taken 2-year-long programs to get certified to do this, another 6-month program, another year-long program. And then we started the Peavey project after COVID because we just kind of started getting pulled into the community. It was like, hey, we as a business, we're an asset management company. We need this. We started working with college teams, high school teams, and Jake and I, we're full-time both at collegiate. And we looked at each other and said, we've got to make this full-time. Like, this is a passion project where we get to honor a guy who's given us so much. So a couple of years ago, we said, let's do it. Let's jump out. Let's make this full-time. And, it's been amazing. We've served, 2 years, just under 10,000 individuals. You're talking 50 teams, a whole bunch of organizations that we've worked with. And you kind of feel like, day in and day out, you're showing up and you're giving back so much that was given to you and hopefully setting people up to thrive and be successful and be healthy. And again, as I said, understand what it means to be human, because so many of us don't know because society tells us we have to be this way. Oh, and especially, a male athlete growing up in this world, you can be nervous before you get into the batter's box. That's okay. It's your body telling you something's getting ready to happen. And you learn to work with that. You learn to breathe into that and walk into performance. And that's the fun part of what we do, is we give skills and we give a toolbox to individuals we're working with, but then we get to go on a very deep individual level as we work with folks one-on-one. And it's just rewarding, passionate work. We're living our passions right now is what we like to say.
That's awesome. You're really really neat to see, and it's we're going to stay on topic here and ask some questions, but I would say you found something that is far bigger than athletics, and you should continue to pursue it with all your passions because both of you speak from the heart, and that's authentic, and that's what makes it fun. Is like you're clearly doing something. The key to happiness, in my opinion, is that mindful approach to life, right? True happiness, and you're able to live that every day. So I wonder, to the two pro athletes that I got here in my Brady Bunch setup here, how and when, right? I guess Michael, you're far from old, but I think you got Evan by a couple years here, and I
Why I
wonder.
wear a hat, this gray hair.
Listen, I got a feeling Jeff and I are winning the age contest here. And it's neat to hear you guys reflect on if I could have found that mindfulness part of life or mindset when I was in high school. Hey, I'm 50, and I'm like, man, I wish I could not only look back to high school athletics as where my like I played club lacrosse, but we stopped there. But like I in college, but I would say if I could look and trace back to how I handled my first performance review at a job that I was disappointed in, how I handled aspects of relationships in my life, and so really cool at your guys' age. Neat to think, and now to think how it's going to spread is super cool. So I guess Michael, we're kind of I hear this and it inspires me from a redefining of masculinity too. And I wonder, in the world you guys were in now with professional athletics, where does mindfulness come in? Where in your career did it start to become something that was pertinent or relevant in your life that you were open to?
Sure. Well, hearing Collin talk about being okay to be human, I think that's what really speaks to me as I've gotten out of, as I've transitioned out of being a player, being retired for 8 years now, and I'm able to pull layers off of my career and understand how often I did struggle, right? And how often mentally I was. I mean, I was anxious before every single game. There's no question about it. Every single time I stepped in a batter's box, and you have to learn on the fly because it wasn't almost. I don't want to say it wasn't acceptable to talk about it, but it just wasn't talked about. You didn't talk about with your teammates, man, I'm nervous for this game or this. I hated opening day. I hated opening day because opening day for me was just 162 unknowns. I didn't know what was going to happen now for the next. Am I good enough? Can I do this again? Can I keep it going? And I say to everybody, for me personally, one thing I regret is not journaling more when I played, not just being able to get things off of my mind, off of my chest. And so it just didn't cloud my brain and constantly think about things all of the time. I think it would have saved me, as Collin said, a lot of stress. And I remember back in 2005, distinctly, 2005 was a point in my career where I was hitting my first year of arbitration. And if anybody doesn't know how it works in professional baseball, that's when you start getting paid. Essentially, you're off of your minimum salary now. And like we know, in the way the world works, once you start getting paid, you have to produce. And if you don't produce, especially in baseball, it's really quickly that career can unravel. And basically you're looking for a job. And I struggled in 2005. It was the first time I had a chance to play every day. And I was putting so much pressure on myself, and I didn't really know how to deal with it because everything I looked at was, man, I've got to hit 300 this year. I've got to hit 25 home runs. I have to drive in 75 runs, or else I'm going to get non-tendered at the end of the season and I'm not going to have a job next year. And everything was performance-based. And I really, really struggled. Fortunately, I was tendered a contract, but I made a conscious effort in that offseason of 2005 to 2006 to try and figure out a way to alleviate the pressure I was putting on myself. And for me at that time, because I wasn't equipped with programs like the Peavey Project, which is why I'm so passionate about it now, because giving players, people, these tools is immensely informative, because I didn't have that. So the way I dealt with it was I now was going to sell myself to be the best teammate as I can be. right? And I was gonna think about others. I was gonna think about the ushers when I walked into the park. I was gonna wave. I was gonna put myself in a mindset where I was grateful just for being there. And I think as a professional athlete, that's taboo to say I'm grateful to just be there, because you automatically associate that with contentment. And I wasn't content, or I was content, but I wasn't complacent. And I think that's a big distinction to make. And I think understanding that it is okay to be content, and it's not going to lead to a world of being complacent. You're still going to work. You're still going to try and get better, but you're happy with where you are. I think that's mindfulness. And that allows you now to alleviate a lot of the pressure that you put on yourself to go out and have to perform. And I think that starts for me a lot with gratitude. So, I mean, that kind of is the story why I'm so passionate about the mental health aspect of it. Fast forward to 2013, when I was with Colorado, is when I really started to learn how the performance aspect of mental health, mental awareness, mindfulness would come in and elevate your game to another level. And it's subsequently worked out where I won a batting title and was able to learn different techniques to be able to do that, which is why I'm curious to hear what the Peavey project teaches and the techniques and the toolbox, so to speak, to give these players.
And
Let's
that's
talk.
like, yeah,
Ahead,
that's insane to me that like 8 years in, like, you know, the batting title, like it helped you. So cool that it helped you at one point to give yourself a better mindset just for the day-to-day life of being a professional athlete. And then later in your career, once you realize that as you said, contentment, that it then played another role in increasing your performance.
Yes.
Which is just like, man,
I love that.
double.
I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Hey, I'm really intrigued because even though there's not a whole generation between you, Michael, and Evan, there's enough time here that Evan grew up in a slightly different age. When we were talking about this more, I'm actually reminded, as I hear you talk, back to when the movie The Natural came out. Do you remember when Roy Hobbs got in a batting slump and they had that guy up in the front of the room? Collin and Jake, you have to have watched this movie at some point in time, but there's a scene that was from back in the 50s, right? And you know, it's wow, whatever. We're in a much different age today, right? So Evan, you grew up in a world at collegiate. I'm assuming that's when you got introduced to these guys. And so you started building a toolbox relatively early in your life. I'd just like to know a little bit about that and how you've utilized that through your college and now the beginning stages of your pro career.
Yeah. So obviously collegiate is the bridge between Alex Peavey and I, and he was the first one that introduced me to this topic of mindfulness and this concept, and getting to know what that is, and you know, everything that comes with that, and the mental aspects of, you know, sports performance. I feel like getting to know that early during my time at collegiate provided me with an advantage, you know, moving forward to college and then, you know, now to professional baseball, because like some of the guys here have touched on, you know, it's becoming more popular, but I don't feel like even when I was growing up, it was talked about that much until I really started to, you know, get older and get more experience in the game. And so, like I was saying, I met Coach Peavey. He introduced mindfulness to me in a basketball setting first, because, you know, that was my first passion, was basketball. And he was my high school coach for my sophomore and junior year. But him having such an expertise in the field, I think was just huge for me and, you know, my development. I think, you know, I was very gifted physically, being a 6'4" left-handed pitcher, you know, with a good arm. I mean, I won't, you know, say that didn't play any part of where I am now, but I am very, very grateful for having that foundation of the mental aspect of sport. It was just absolutely instrumental in my development. and has really helped me get to where I am now.
Okay, so I want to challenge you just a little bit, and I love that. But I want to know more specifically, like when you first started hearing this term mindfulness, and we talk a little bit about toolbox. And Jake and Collin, I'm going to come back to you guys and talk a little bit about how you empower student athletes with the tools. But I'm just wondering, if you go back to the very beginning, Evan, what were the first things that you remember hearing, and how did they impact you in a basketball game, when you're standing at the foul line ready to win a game, or when you're getting nervous before opening day? Or how specifically did you feel like it played out in your life?
When I think back to learning about mindfulness and what it means to me, I really think about the term self-awareness. And that is something that Coach Peavey played a huge role in teaching me, was self-awareness. So that's one thing that, I heavily associate with mindfulness, is the self-awareness aspect of it. It's always being present. And obviously when it comes to sports performance, that is huge, because your mind has got to be focused on what you're doing, and it's easy to get distracted with so many outside factors going on around you in sport, especially as you get higher up and, the spotlight becomes bigger, the lights are a little bit brighter, the crowds are bigger. All of those factors make it more difficult to focus, which can lead to, a hindering performance. But then you really circle back to self-awareness and focus on what you're doing and being present in that moment.
I love that. Jake, let me hand this back off to you. We'll kind of go around the horn again, but I'm really intrigued by how. So you work with corporations, you work with teams, and you work with individuals. If Michael came to you and said, "Hey, I'm struggling. Opening day is the best day of the year for any baseball fan in the country," and yet this guy who has reached the pinnacle of his career can say, "It's horrible. Like, I got 162 auditions ahead of me, and I don't know what's going to happen." And I just wonder, how do you take a real life circumstance like this and equip young athletes with the toolbox to be successful?
I think one, that's great awareness. Like the fact that you can pinpoint what the challenge is huge. And then we'd say, okay, where do we notice that physiologically? Because with every feeling, there's a place in the body where it stores. For me personally, anxiety stores right here. So the second I feel like my sternum turns into a magnet and starts drawing me forward, that's often a really good time for me to kind of lock in and just notice, okay, are my thoughts getting sped up? Am I becoming more in tune with the distraction than the task at hand? And so tuning into those physiological cues just kind of helps us make this mind-body connection. But from there, we know a lot about, we don't know a ton about the flow state and kind of being in this zone. But one thing we absolutely know is if you are anxious at all, one of the most important things you can do is shrink the challenge. And so there's a challenge skill balance that we really want to navigate. And anytime the challenge is way greater than your skill set, you're going to be anxious. So like, if you've got a 16-year-old, they've never driven, we're in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm like, "Hey, Chief, we're going up to DC, lock and load, like, let's go." Like, skill set, not high, challenge, really high. Like, that's anxious, like that's anxiety right there. So we're like, okay, yeah, that's not great. The opposite is boredom. So we oscillate between that. So I'm like, all right, like Michael, if it were opening day and you were going against like Tuckahoe All-Stars, that would be boring, right? That the skill set and the challenge does not meet your skill set. Right. And so the way we do that is like, yes, if you're trying to audition for 162 games, you're going to be really anxious. Right. But if we can ground ourselves into the demands of this moment. And so, a tool, if you will, is an acronym as simple as WIN, like what's important now. If we can get really good at asking ourselves that question, it grounds us into the details of this moment and gets us action oriented to respond with wisdom, respond wisely. And I think that's the greatest byproduct of a consistent mindfulness practice, is that how can we respond wisely to the good, the bad, the hard, the ugly, and do so, again and again and again. And through that becomes a muscle. And the more we work out that muscle, we kind of shift this default mode of responding wisely. And so if we do that and we view it as 162 opportunities to practice getting a little bit stronger, often we find that visceral response can shrink a little bit, and it's not going to deteriorate because we're human, right? And as Collin said, we want to celebrate that humanity. But what we find is that the edges will dissolve a little bit. And the better we get at noticing it, if you name it, you can tame it, right? So the better I get at naming it, oh man, I'm feeling a little anxious. That's just my body telling me that something's about to happen. And I fall back to my training, which I've done so much of. I put tens, thousands of hours into this. What's important now is let's be a great teammate and let's hop in the box and see what happens, right? And so that would be kind of like the way we would navigate that situation, for example, if that's helpful.
I do love though. That mindset's great. I love one thing that you said. And then, Collin, I wanted to ask you, I've been writing a ton of stuff down, but I wanted, Collin, you to follow up a little bit with this idea of failing forward, because I loved hearing that. And I thought maybe you could give me some senses on how you work with that. But I did want to just say, Jake, what I do love is there's a key piece that you put there in the end is that you revert back and rely on your training, right? And I oftentimes, want to remind young people, you can be as mindful as you want. If you're not doing the things you need to do to improve, like the other piece that comes with it, right? Like I would tell you, I could have been as mindful a high school lacrosse goalie as I could have been. I wasn't going to stay after and take the extra 50 shots that the guys wanted to take that the other goalie wanted, right? And so there is a piece of that with the hard work is also really important to get to the spots all you guys did. So I always want to, I love that. And I love that you did say, then you got to revert back and rely on that training. Right, because clearly Michael and Evan have the tool set, and then they can revert back to that mindset. But I think it's also important to remind kids, do the work too. You can't just have a great mindset about it. You got to do some work. So Collin, maybe talk to me. Failed forward. Love hearing that, and I want you to talk to me about that.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on what you just said there. So when we talk about trust and confidence, so we've got a big curriculum that we've put together over the years that talks about what mindfulness is, because I think it's looked at, in my eyes, when I met Alex, it was a very fluffy idea when I came out. I'm a middle linebacker. You're talking to me about mindfulness, the pictures I'm seeing, or somebody on the side of a mountain in a loincloth with long hair sitting crisscross applesauce, right? And that just, it's wonderful. I'd love to do that 10 years in, but it's not the life I live, right? Mindfulness literally had the worst marketing strategy in the history of marketing strategies in our country, just because it doesn't meet our population where it's at. And that was the beauty of Alex, is he took this idea that had a horrible marketing strategy behind it, and he made it so tangible. And for us, that was the secret sauce that is Alex. It's like, this dude's talking really deep, but he's given me something that I can take and I can leave here, and I know exactly what he's talking about. So as we put together this kind of curriculum, it's what is mindfulness? Okay, let's now talk about the neuroscience, the why behind this, because we know we're literally rewiring our brains for certain parts of our brains to be active when I'm performing, certain parts to downregulate. That's the neuroscience. And we get into the power of thought and realizing, hey, we've got 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. We are very hardwired to seek out the negative. All right. And that's what Michael was talking about. Hey, I've got 162 games. My brain survival instincts kicking in like, oh, shoot, let me think about all 162. And this one right here, you're seeing the worst, right? You're projecting the worst, because if I can get through it, I can survive. All right. And that's what you're going into survival mode there. And then we talk about emotions, but then let's bring it back to what you talked about here. And it's like, how do I fail forward? And we talk about trust and confidence. And if Michael's there and he's coming to me with that situation, it's like, hey, opening day's coming up, man. I'm fast forwarding way too far. I'm thinking about 162 games. I'm trying to dial into this moment right now. It's like, all right, let's get to a place where we're talking about trust and self-confidence, okay? Because they kind of go hand in hand. Trust in oneself, right? We can look at as self-confidence. And we get to a place where we trust three things. And you hit it on the head, Greg. Number one is this: I've got to put the work in. It's really simple. If I haven't put the work in, I shouldn't be confident when I step into the batter's box. All right. If I stepped into the batter's box against Evan right now, I have no chance. All right. I can do all the positive self-talk I want. Guess what? I'm striking out. There's no doubt about it. I haven't picked up a bat since I was in 10th or 11th grade. So want to be really clear. You've got to put the work in. That's number one. Number two is this, though. It's reminding ourselves of all the hard times we've made it through. And I'll ask all of you, all five of you, what percentage of the hard times and hard moments have we made it through? And the answer is really simple. You're sitting here right now. It's 100%. All right. And it's reminding ourselves of this fail forward. I can fail and then I can learn from it. And Jake and I are really big with this. We don't like the term fail. We try to get out of it. It's a mindfulness thing. We look at it now. Everyone judges us off of, how'd the game go? It's really simple. They want to know, did you win or did you lose? All right. And for us, it's so much more than that 1 second when the clock strikes 0, right? And the game's over. It's the last out. It's, did I win or did I learn? Right? Every loss sets up an opportunity for me to go out there and to continue to grow. All right. And those opportunities that we consider failures, that's just an opportunity for me to understand where I'm at in this moment and maybe things that I need to do to help myself out moving forward. And it gets us in this growth mindset. Okay. So number one is, have I put the work in? 2, what percentage of the hard moments have you made it through? And have you chose to learn from those and continue to grow? And number 3, I think it's probably, Jake knows I'm really big on this. It's understanding who you have on your team. All right. And when we talk about a sports setting and we're talking to an individual, they're normally like this player, this player, this player, this player. And it's like, yeah, that's your actual team. But then think about all these other people you have supporting you, your parents, your coaches, your teachers, whoever it is. And I always ask the question to anybody I work with individually, is there's anything in your life that could happen that you couldn't pick this up and find somebody probably within 10 seconds to support you and help you out? And for me growing up, youngest of 3, I didn't want mom and dad to have to deal with my issues, right? So I kind of put myself into like, I've got to handle this on my own. I need to do this on my own. Talk about decreasing performance. If I let go and I'm like, man, I've got mom and dad who support me. I've got my teammates who support me, my coaches. Who cares if I mess up? All these dudes are here for me no matter what's going on. And you start looking at other people and you start looking at the situation, how you would treat other people. If a teammate came up to you and said, hey, this is going on, you'd be like, how can I help you? Let me know in any way how I'm more than happy to assist in any way, shape, or form. But we don't put ourselves out there to get the same support. So if I go to a place where Michael's like, you know what, Collin, I worked my tail off this offseason. Like, I'm in the best shape I've been in. I'm seeing the ball great. All right. I've learned so much. I'm continuing to learn no matter what's going on. I'll either go out there and I will execute at the plate, or guess what? I'm going to learn each and every pitch, each and every at bat, what's going to make me better the next time around. And I got a whole lot of people supporting me no matter what's going on. That's failing forward, right? That puts us in a mindset that we're trusting ourselves, we're trusting our team, we're super confident. And no matter what happens, we continue to grow. And that's the beauty and like being human, right? What more can you ask of yourself? What more can a coach ask of you? And I'm a coach. I can't ask anything else of my kids but to go out and do that on a daily basis. And to even break it down even more, attitude and effort. You go out there and sell out and give it everything you have in that moment, right? There's some stuff we got to do before that we talked about putting the work in and stuff. But in that moment, Michael, you give it everything you have. All right. You do it with a good attitude and you keep learning and growing and being a great teammate. I can't ask anything else of you, and you can't ask anything else of yourself either. It's the reality of it, right? And that puts me in a space where hopefully I can take a deep exhale and just go out and let my work just show itself there in the plate.
Great.
I love that. I love that. Hey, one of the things that I follow you guys religiously on social media. So if anybody's listening to this and doesn't, your daily shots of wisdom are really, really good. And one of the things I was reviewing today was this 90 days of gratitude. Kind of, you need to sit down and write down 3 things. And I think, Jake, you were talking about this one, if I'm not mistaken. In the first day, you're going to talk about your mom and your dad and your kids or whatever, but you can't repeat things over 90 days, right? So at the end of 90 days, you're getting to some really fine stuff. And maybe that's, Michael, what you were kind of experiencing. You may not have journaled, but if you're walking into a stadium and you're thanking the ushers, you're showing gratitude. And it seems to me that puts you in a much different place to slow your heart rate down and actually enjoy the moment a little bit more. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because you strike me. I've known you for less than a year, but you strike me as someone who is an anomaly, who's come out of a world that you've come out of, where the world kind of looks at you and envies you for what you have or what you have done, and yet you have maintained a heart of gratitude. And I just think that's really, really impressive. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that as it relates to you, Michael.
Sure. Well, there's a Kenny Chesney song, "We Didn't Get Here Alone," right? I mean, none of us get to where we are going by themselves. I mean, we'd like to think we are. I like to think that, yeah, I just came out of the womb. I was destined to be a Major League Baseball player. I did everything. I worked hard. I mean, I needed somebody to throw me a ball, even in a game. I needed an opponent to play against. So, there's things to be grateful for everywhere you look. And one of the mind shifts I made when I had performance was, I need this pitcher to be pitching. I need him to be good, because if he wasn't good, then I wouldn't have a job. Because if none of us were good, then there wouldn't be professional baseball. If the stakes weren't high, then nobody would be watching this game right now. So those are little mind shifts that I was able to make when I started learning how to now turn mindfulness, mental wellness into performance-based. Was I was able to shift the things and look at opponents now as my chess pieces. I needed this guy. I needed Clayton Kershaw. I needed CC Sabathia. I needed them to be at their best, so I can now show what my best is. And instead of being fearful of them, I was appreciative of them now. And it was those types of things that really helped me. And then what also really helped me was self-talk. And, baseball players, because you talk about, you hear everywhere you go, it's a game of failure. It's everything you ever hear. Baseball is a game that you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're in the Hall of Fame. It's blah, 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 right? So you're just beat up with, you're expected to fail. And I had to flip that script. And Walt Weiss in 2013 had a speaker come. Walt Weiss he trained in MMA when he was a player. And when he had one of his MMA guys come in and talk to us in spring training, and he said when he was getting himself ready for a fight, he would sit in the bathtub 6 weeks out. And every single day he'd sit in the bathtub and he'd start at 100. And he'd close his eyes and he's counting 100. He says, "I'm the baddest dude on the planet. 99, nobody can beat me. 98, nobody has outworked me. 97, I'm the baddest dude on the planet." He went all the way down to 0 every single day. I didn't take it that far, excuse me, but I would starting in that year in spring training, I would be in right field and be like, there's nobody out here that's worked harder than me. There's nobody out here that's prepared more than me. There's nobody out here that deserves success. And I think as baseball players in particular, you don't feel like you deserve success, because especially if you go, like, if I had a week where I'm 8 for 20, I'm expecting the next week to go 2 for 20, because the law of averages says I'm only going to hit 280 no matter what. Well, no, that's not true. That's my mind telling me what my limitations are and what I'm expecting. I now can go out there and I put in just as much work as those pitchers. I deserve to go 8 for 20 next week as well. And that mindset in that 2013 year, unfortunately, it was 2 years before I was done playing, but that mindset allowed me to go out there and it was the first year and only year in my career I didn't have back-to-back offers. So I didn't go back-to-back offer games because I told myself I didn't have to go back-to-back offer games. I didn't have to fail. I deserve to go out there and have success. And being able to flip that switch and being able to now use your mind as an asset as opposed to something that's holding you back is something that is an incredible thing to give. And talking about gratitude and talking about giving back, I would be remiss if I wasn't able to share those techniques and those tactics and the things that I learned throughout my career to be able to help deal with anxieties and thrive in that type of pressure pack moment, those types of pressure pack moments.
Love it. Hey, Evan, because we're going to run out of time here, and I think this is applicable and interesting. You made your debut this year, right?
Yes, I did in August.
Yeah. And you came out of the bullpen?
Correct. Yep.
So you're in the bullpen for your first appearance, and then you have to jog in from the bullpen to the mound. I'm interested in what you were thinking about in that 20 to 30 minutes that it takes you to get loose, get to the mound, and throw your first pitch at the major league level. What do you remember?
I want to add two more baseball questions. What stadium were you in? And did you know, was it scripted, I'm coming out of the pen, or were you like, hey, lefty, get up?
We were in Camden in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And no, there was no script. I mean, I was activated on Friday for the start of the series, and I didn't throw Friday, but I made my debut on Saturday. And so they got me and a right-hander going in the sixth when our starter got into a little bit of trouble. They ended up putting him in the game, so they sat me down. And I mean, I was probably ready to go in 3 throws. I made about 3 throws, and I was ready to go in the game. And they sat me down. We come up to bat, and Baltimore goes out, and they have, I think, 2 pitching changes that inning. At that point, they had already told me, hey, Justice is in. So, I'm trying to stay calm in this moment. But at the same time, I'm like, just get me out there, get me on the field. I don't want to sit around in the bullpen too long, make too many throws, think about it too long. I just wanted to get out there. Baltimore ends up having 2 pitching changes that inning. So I get up and down a couple times. Finally, inning's over, and I get to come in. I'm running it right as I crossed the center field gate. I had just stepped on the warning track. I hear the PA announcer ask everybody to rise to their feet and stand for the singing of God Bless America. So I pause probably 2 steps onto the field, and the flag is right beyond center field wall. Turn around. It was kind of a blessing, honestly, because, with getting up and down so many times, the wheels began to turn, but being able to just stop in the outfield there for a little bit and, listen to God Bless America, a song that I've heard a million times at baseball games, and kind of remind myself, hey, you're playing the same game. I think that was very helpful for me. Finally got out to the mound, and I think after I kind of got myself together, looked at my feet standing there on a major league mound for the first time, I was most nervous to throw the first warm-up pitch. I just wanted the catcher to catch it. I didn't want to airmail him or spike it or anything. But once I got that out of the way, I felt like I gathered myself and went from there.
How did it go?
Yeah.
I don't even remember. How did it go?
So I walked my first batter on 4 pitches. Just how I dreamt it up, Catcher came out, gave me a pat on the back, and said, "Hey, congratulations, you made it. You're a big leaguer, but it's time to go." First pitch I threw after he came out there was right down the middle, and from there it was pretty good. Just started filling up the zone. Ended up giving up a run, but walked away with 2 strikeouts. Made a pretty big adjustment after those first 4 pitches too. So it was pretty amazing though.
Awesome.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Michael, that's a pretty cool. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Jeff, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Michael, you've seen a lot of young guys come up and make their debuts like that. It's a pretty special time, isn't it? And I would imagine it's not uncommon I mean, you hear about the guy who hits the home run in his first at bat periodically, but it's probably a whole lot more common for the guy to throw 4 straight balls when he first makes his debut, would be my guess.
No doubt. No doubt. Absolutely.
Way to turn it around. I mean, you were the
Special.
baddest man on the planet. Nobody had outworked you, right? I mean,
That's right.
Greg, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna like in the baseball mindset, just ask you how difficult was it to, you said the mind starts turning, get up, sit down, get up, sit down. I mean, you're hoping once you hear your name, you're hoping for probably the 3 ground outs to second base, let's get on the bump. If you were in that position, if you could give a young player a piece of advice, like one piece of baseball advice, as you're the active pro on the Zoom right now, what's the piece of advice? Whether it's coming up at the in the big at bat at that moment that means a lot, or whether it's like, hey, I'm gonna like I'm it's my at bat and the pitcher is now the coach is gonna make a change, or I'm ready to step on the mound and I have to wait. What was something that maybe you did, like a tool you had or something you tried to calm that mind down or just change it?
I mean, if I could give a piece of advice to somebody going through that experience for the first time, I would just really try and preach to them, just believe in yourself. You're here for a reason. A lot of people have done their homework on you. They didn't just pick your name out of a hat. So believe in yourself and why you're there and everything it took to get there. Stick to your routine. That would be the biggest piece of advice I could give to somebody, or tell myself if I was back in that moment.
It's awesome.
Great.
I still think you probably in life end up throwing the first 4 balls anyway, but that's awesome.
Hey,
Probably.
I have something
We'll
I
see.
want to ask. Yeah, I have something I want to ask Jake and Collin before we lose the opportunity. So, my wife is involved with something at the UVA hospital called the Wisdom and Wellbeing Clinic. And one of the projects that they work on is training people to help other people. And one of the things that I saw on your website, and I'm going to read this if it's okay, it said, when starting the Peavey project, Alex was adamant that we commit ourselves to serving the Sarahs of the community, the helpers, the community champions, the teachers, nurses, patients, parents, first responders, other nonprofits, so many others who commit themselves to serving others. And I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about that, because you're 2 people and it's a big world out there. And there are lots of domains that need to be thinking about mindfulness, not just collegiate sports or the 50 teams that you're working with right now, but we need more people like Michael and Evan out there talking about mindfulness so that others can feel like it's okay to be human. And I just wonder kind of a little bit about that in your practice. And where does the name Sarah come from?
Go ahead, Jake.
Sarah is Alex's wife. And help the helper is really a basketball term. So, if we're all playing defense together and I've got Collin's back, he's on the ball, and I go to help, who's got my back? Right. And that's a very critical part of any team defense is that's what makes the team work. Right. Within a community, we have the same thing. Right. We just call them different things. Right. They're teachers. We're looking at an education battle right now where it's really hard to retain good teachers. We're looking at police officers who are going through a really hard time. We're looking at other nonprofits that are seeking to do good, that are almost running out of oxygen. It's like they're the giving tree kind of getting towards the stump. So for us, Alex is like, look at Sarah. Like, what Sarah is doing is she is my primary caretaker and she's raising our kids and she's like putting food on the table. Like, there's so many of people like Sarah and there's so many helpers in our community. We need to orient ourselves to be of service, like be an oxygen mask for others in that way. And so we were very, being coaches, we were very in tune with the student athlete mental health piece, but the Help the Helper initiative has been, equally as special, and something that Sarah has helped us develop and cultivate. And honestly, like that she's the CEO of that domain, like that is what she does. So that's going to be our intent. So we work with groups like other nonprofits. There's a group called Cancer Retreat Center here in Richmond. So anybody that's being impacted by cancer, whether you're a patient or a caregiver, we provide training, every once a week. or we'll work with Henrico County Police. We've done maybe 30, 40 hours just in the past year or so working with them, their SVU unit. So really trying to connect. I think we've got a daycare coming up. Like, I mean, I can barely handle
PTAs.
a 2 and a 3-year-old, just 2 of these little guys. So imagine having a whole class of them. Just makes me respect what they do and the amount of just like love and attention and intention they put in. So the more we can be a resource and equip them with skills to, gracefully, do their jobs. And we're not coming in there to give them $1 million, but if we can give them some tools to turn down the anxiety, turn down the stress, increase the moments of clarity, that's awesome. Right. And that's something that we're committed to doing.
And Jeff, I'll add to your point there. You said, how do we get more guys talking about this in the community? I think that's part of what we're so passionate about is, let's just say 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, you said like, hey, I'm going for a jog, right there. What are you running from? Why are you going for a jog? Right. And now it's, oh, you're going to exercise. Awesome. You take care of your body, right? That's not second guessed. Hey, I'm going to the gym. Awesome. Good for you. If you said, hey, I'm going to go meditate for 10 minutes, somebody probably look at you. You doing okay? What's going on there? You okay? You need some help? It's like, no, I'm just taking my brain to the gym. Like I take my body to the gym all the time. Why wouldn't I take the most important thing to the gym to allow me to be here, to be present, to perform at a high level and to go serve other people? I think that's kind of the kicker with us and the secret sauce with Alex. We practice mindfulness so that we can be present and take care of ourselves so that we can then go serve others. So that I can then be a great husband or try to be a great husband. We'll let my wife be the judge of that, but then show up for my kids, right? Show up for the guys that I'm coaching constantly, show up and be present for this talk right now. That's the beauty of it. And I think the more that guys like Michael and Evan and LeBron and Steph Curry and Russell Wilson and these guys are talking about it, it starts to normalize it and that starts to trickle down. And hopefully there's folks that can provide the proper training and, the access to meditation and the different things that allow you to practice mindfulness so that folks can start to see the benefits a lot earlier than, hey, I'm in crisis mode right now and I need something, or, hey, I'm going off to college and I'm really struggling. We want to see this as a proactive mental health tool, just like we see physical fitness as a proactive mental health and physical tool. It's in our book, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool convergence. I think you're doing it at the right time. And I think you nailed it. And the impact that I think you guys can make is huge. I spent the afternoon on an hour-long podcast with 2 Richmond-based educators who have started like a mindfulness podcast for educators and for the world of education. And it was remarkable. It's remarkable how they're running parallel. It is for your guys' focus with some of the things you're doing, and in particular for athletics, that's wonderful. It's so neat to see that's also going on in a parallel way to help educators. You guys are doing it for first responders, or the Help the Helper program, and that's a pretty cool time for this type of stuff to be going on. So I think it's just overall, it's just so inspiring. Like all 4 of you are just, it's a really neat thing. Like I've done a bunch of these with Jeff. We've met some unbelievably interesting people, but holy cow is what the 4 of you are talking about and doing transcend athletics. It's just one of those, as a guy running a school, I'm left with, I have notes to go back and work with my faculty on some of this stuff to kind of have them do. And so, again, it's awesome. It's endless where this could go. And sometimes that's like I can feel my chest getting pulled now because I'm passionate about it.
That's right.
There's 1,000 things with this. No, I can focus on my kids at my school, right? Like that's my 162 game season this year. But just awesome, absolutely awesome. And Evan, a quick question: what percentage of guys would you say you got a 25-man roster on the major league level? How many guys right now on the average team would you say are thinking about this stuff or have that or focused on mindset work?
It's hard to put into a percentage. I would say at the big league level, it's definitely more of a focus, just because it's the highest level there is. The performance aspect is so demanding that guys are looking for any method possible to perform the best they can. And obviously, the mental side of it plays such a tremendous role in all of it that people are very, very aware.
Can you imagine, though, if you're going to be part of a generation when you're eligible to go in the Hall of Fame, that you're going to go in, you guys will go in as a generation of mindfulness, because the game has grown from I'm part of, I watched a lot of guys that got their advantage by probably taking advantage of things that weren't legal necessarily, right? And so that's a stigma and an asterisk on it. And good for you if you and your generation of guys that are playing the game at a really high level go in as the generation of mindful individuals. I'll go right back up to Cooperstown, bring my boy back up there and look at the whole generation. It's just awesome. It's awesome. You can tell, I'm passionate about this, and I had no idea the level of, I know of Michael Cuddyer. I've seen your boy play, but I didn't know at all that was part. And this is just so awesome, man. Awesome.
Michael, by the way, Greg was the voice in the press box when Casey participated in our showcase last year. So that's what he's referencing. Guys, we are right at the hour mark, and this happens every single time we do this. I feel like we could go 3 hours here. I mean, each of you, we went around the horn 3 times, I think, and I'd love to go around the horn 10 times. But that just means we got to bring you back at some point in time. Continue to do the great work that you are doing. I am so thankful for Amanda for introducing us. I have no idea where most of these conversations are going, but I know that because we're talking about it and because we're focused on making the world a little better place, making us all a little more human, bringing humanity together better, I am convinced that our paths are going to overlap here. I can think of a bunch of baseball teams that would benefit from your help right now, and probably a couple of corporations as well. Maybe it's the Colorado Rockies or the Minnesota Twins, for all we know. I don't know. Certainly it could be the Friends School in Virginia Beach. But whatever we can do to help you guys, if you're listening to this thing, www.Peavey Project with an E, right, Jake? The Peavey Project with an E.org. You can learn a lot more about these guys. They are a nonprofit, so if you want to donate, feel free to do that. I'm sure it would be appreciated. I just can't thank you guys enough. You're special individuals, and you're all invested in other people, and I'm just so thankful to know you. So appreciate you being on our conversation here, and if we can ever do anything for you, please let me know. All right.
Thanks so much.
Good night, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
H3 Conversations is brought to you by Major League Mindset, results on and off the field, and by Jeff Burton Consulting, charting your path to a successful outcome, and by Croze Sports, family, community, and sports.